So today we are with Jason, illustrator also for Magic of the Gathering. I would like to introduce myself. I'm Joelle. I'm a co-owner of the team, the Banned MTG team, and we are in Tuscany today in Lucca at Lucca Comix. We will talk with Jason about his illustrations for Magic the Gathering. So, I would like to know a bit about you, how your career started with Wizard of the Coast. I know that you also did some illustrations for Dungeons and Dragons. How did the collaboration start with Wizard of the Coast and led you to do illustrations for Magic?
Well, I had done a good amount of illustration work for another fantasy game. That game came out at a big gaming convention in the US called Gen Con. Some of the art directors from Wizards of the Coast, who at that time were publishing magazines called Dungeon and Dragon magazine, which were a big part of the Dungeons and Dragons history. They saw my work and they sent me an email and asked if I wanted to start working on the magazines. That was in 1999, 1998, and I basically kept working on D&D for years and years after that. The art directors at Wizards of the Coast all work in the same office. They all share, office space together. They talk about new artists they're excited about. I didn't benefit from that because it still took about 10 years before I started working on Magic. But eventually, they decided that I was ready to make the leap, and they offered me a few Magic cards.
And how was the transition to do Dungeons and Dragons illustrations to Magic of the Gathering? Did you have to change your style, or did you keep the same?
Magic has a little more variation in style, actually, than Dungeons and Dragons. At the time, D&D was in the early days of 3rd edition and 3.5 and 4th edition, all of which were trying to define a visual style, a very defined, visual style. Magic has always allowed the opportunity for, many different artists, many different styles. So Magic is more fun for me as an artist because I'm not trying to match some sort of set brand. I'm just trying to create the best art that I can. And I think that really benefits the game as a whole. I think all the artists that work on it have a very similar approach to mine in that they just try to produce the best work possible. And that's why the game stands, alone in the marketplace.
Really long time. Yeah. Okay, so you started with Wizard of the Coast. You would say, as a first publisher, you started with Wizard of the Coast. Do you feel like, do you have any advice to a person who would like to start as an illustrator? Do you think you were lucky starting with Wizard of the Coast? Or it's just if you are really good and people can notice you, or are there some tips for people to get noticed at the start?
Well, if you're really good, it definitely helps. But if your work isn't visible, then the art directors never see it. So it doesn't matter how good you are. So the best advice is to practice, and get good as much as you possibly can. And then try to make your work as visible as you can. Put it on every website that you can put it on. Have your own website. Try to find contact information for art directors. Many companies have submission areas for new artists. You simply have to be very proactive. You have to go after it yourself because no one's going to bring it to you, except in my case.
That's really good advice. If you don't find the opportunity, maybe they don't come to you.
Exactly.
Okay, so I would like to talk about the card, if you can remember about it. It's Scroll Rock.
Yeah.
That's an expedition that you did for the card.
Sure.
Did you take inspiration from the original card? Because you were not the original artist.
That's right.
You just did the explanation. Did you take inspiration, or you just, because the image is really different from the original one?
Yes, it is.
How did it work?
Well, with those cards specifically, the masterpiece set that was a part of, they wanted it to reflect the style of the Kaladesh world setting. It needed to have that look and be part of that world, and the original one obviously wasn't. So it made it very easy from that, perspective. But they also wanted it to be an actual invention, an actual machine, and the original was more of a cabinet.
Yes. Yes.
Which was nice, but this was such a different take on it that it made it very, very easy to come up with something that was original. That said, it was a lot more difficult to actually design the machine itself because I'm not an engineer. And so I had to design a machine that looked like maybe it could work. And obviously it probably wouldn't, but it just needed to look like it might. And that took me a little while to figure out a visually pleasing design. But once I did, I turned it in and they liked it. And I started rendering it up. And originally, they didn't actually have the plan to release that card as anything special. The original commission was a regular size art, landscape instead of full art. And what ended up happening was halfway through, they sent me another email and said, hey, we'll give you a little extra money. We're doing this special thing with a new border and a new card type. Maybe you could put a little bit more time into it. And I was like, okay, sure. They still didn't tell me what they were doing. And then I turned it in, and the original art description asked for a machine that looked like it was old and has been kind of in storage for a long time. Cobwebs and dark metal and, kind of greasy. So I turned that in, and they were like, this is great, this is perfect, this matches what we asked. By the way, could you totally repaint it so it's shiny and new? So I did that, and I really, really was very happy with how the image turned out. So in the end, I'm glad that they made that change. And the card itself is obviously a very useful card. So it was a fun project.
You had to change while designing the card. Was it the first time that happened with Magic the Gathering, or you had other occasions?
Sometimes during production, things change. Rules get shifted around. When we're doing the art, it's still almost a year away from publishing, so the rules are still being fine-tuned. A lot of the designers are still making big cuts and big decisions, even that late in the process. And sometimes the art reflects that. Rarely, though. That is the first time that I've actually had to deal with something that was that big of a change. Usually it's very small stuff.
Okay. Another question, since we're talking of Magic the Gathering. Did you play the game, or you're completely new?
I played the game a lot when I was a teenager, when the game was fairly new. I play casually now. I do not play competitively. I do not really keep up with the new sets all that well. I play with my friends when we're hanging out having a few drinks. We've all got very old decks.
Okay. So, do you have any plans for the future that you can talk about?
For Magic?
For Magic or Dungeons and Dragons, since we are in the Wizard of the Coast world.
Well, I mean, like I said, I played Magic when I was a teenager, and I used to play D&D when I was a teenager too. My real plans for the future are to keep working on both of those games as long as they'll let me. Even if I start working on movies and video games and my career takes me in a completely different direction, I'm never going to stop working on Magic and Dungeons and Dragons, just because they mean a lot to me. They were part of my youth, There's a nostalgia there and a love there that nothing else can really replace. So, yeah, that's my plan, is I'm just going to keep working on it.
That's a good plan. It works until now.
Yeah.
And since we are at Lucca Comix, did you meet any fan? Did you have to sign some cards?
Yeah, I've met a couple.
A couple?
I've signed a few thousand cards so far, probably today. There's a lot of Magic fans that come to Lucca Comix. It's a really, really good show for Magic in general. They even set up me and Steve Argyle next to the Magic play area, which is very, very nice. And it means the fans have easy access to the artists, and it doesn't force them to walk all over the hall to try and find us, which is really nice. So yeah, it's a great show, and it's only my second year here, but it's absolutely a great time.
Okay, last question. Do you have a good story to tell us with a fan who maybe did something crazy to meet you, or do you have any special story?
Well, occasionally you do have a fan that realizes that you're you and you produce the work that they like or love, and they'll start shaking or crying and they'll ask for an autograph, or sometimes they'll simply walk up to the side of the booth and then run away when you try to, offer to sign their card. And that sort of thing is always a little bit interesting. I don't want to say it's unsettling, but it's definitely a response you're not really used to, you're not prepared for. Because, we just make art, man. And most of us, we play the game, we love the game as well. So meeting fans is something that, by and large, is a wonderful experience, and we all love to do. That's why we come to these shows. And so occasionally it's a little awkward, but for the most part, it's really, really a good thing.
It means also something for them, otherwise they wouldn't cry or do so. I'm really happy for you. Okay, so thank you very much for this interview. I'm really happy that you came to Lucca Comix. All over from America, you said.
That's right.
So you're working there, you're going back.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it was really nice to have you here. It was nice to hear your stories, and best of luck for your work. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.